Roll call will be silent, but I have counted. We do have a quorum. We do have minutes today. Representative Galaviz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve the minutes from March 7th, 9th, 10th, and 13th.
We have a motion to accept the minutes from March 7th, 9th, 10th, 13th of 2023. Are there any additions, corrections, or comments to those minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thanks so much for reading these minutes, you and Representative Souter. It takes some time, and it's important that they're accurate, so thanks so much for that. I do have a couple of announcements. Tomorrow we will hear Senate Bill 1161, and then the rules we're going to try to roll through as quickly as possible. I heard on Friday, I did hear that there was a rule, that first set that may be about charter schools that went into Ways and Means, and I'm waiting to hear what happened with that as far as changes were concerned. So we'll find out and we'll report back to you. So those are the announcements. And given that Thursday will probably be at the call of the chair, we'll see how that rolls. I'm sure you would not be unhappy to have a snow day. So this is a great day. And I wanted to tell you that having worked in schools for a long time, that sometimes the Teacher of the Year caused a lot of anxiety and grief in the school, because in the olden days it was such, people would call it a popularity contest, and it's whoever's brown nosing the principal, and all that good stuff. And we really worked hard in the district I was in to help people understand that, what it really amounts to is that we are trying to select someone who represents all that is good and right and true, and who represents the best of all of us, who we want to be and who we aspire to be, and who most of the time we are. But we get to boil it down then to one that gets to represent the entire state of Idaho. And this person actually gets to go back to the Capitol and speak on behalf of all teachers in education. It is no small thing. They have to go through their school, their district, and the state process, having got to serve on that just 1 year. Very time-consuming, very clear rubric, challenging. So to have you here today, it is just a pleasure, and it is an honor. This winner was selected last September, and there were hundreds of nominees, hundreds of people who are doing really great things in our schools. And she's the first to tell you that that is true, because she has met with them and seen that. She has taught at Treaty Rock Elementary School in Post Falls since 2012. She currently teaches 4th grade. She's a graduate of University of Alaska Fairbanks. She received her Master's of Arts in Special Education from Ball State University in 2018. And in her spare time, which I can't imagine there is, she's wrapping up her PhD in Curriculum and Instruction at our very own University of Idaho. She's served on her school's behavioral leadership team, and she believes that relationships and communication are the foundations of effective learning. So much so that she sends emails home to the parents of her children daily. I can't even fathom it. This is who we get to honor and hear from today in House Ed. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Idaho's 2023 Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Karen Lauritzen. Ms. Lauritzen, please come to the podium. It's at the very base of this thing. There's a little button. At the base on this thing. Oh, here he comes to help you.
Thank you so much.
RIT, I tell you. Thank you, Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead and give us your for the record information, just your name, and that you're our Teacher of the Year.
Right.
And
I'm Karen Lauritzen, Idaho's 2023 Teacher of the Year. All right, good morning. Thank you so much for having me today.
I am so thrilled to be honored with this amazing recognition. I feel that, every Idaho teacher this year especially is a Teacher of the Year. I feel that this is an amazing honor that I share with all of Idaho's teachers, and it's an amazing honor that I've been chosen, and I really, really appreciate it. Today, I would like to speak to you about Idaho's educators. When I actually asked many of the teachers that I work with what I felt that I should share with you today. And this is what they told me that they really felt that needed to be said. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. I have been an educator for 21 years, which seems like a really long time. I absolutely love what I do. I love being a teacher. And I teach fourth grade. I've taught kindergarten through fourth grade in Alaska, Idaho, and Arizona. And it is the best job that I can imagine. Every day is busy and eventful, and believe it or not, there's never a dull moment in the classroom. And I get to share my days with students who just fill my days with joy and teach me something new every single day. So it's an amazing job. The reason why I want to speak to you today about retaining educators in Idaho is because of students. And students are why I have devoted my entire life to this job, because I care so much about kids. And kids deserve the absolute best that we can give them. And I believe that Idaho's students deserve the absolute best teachers that we can give them. And retaining the very best educators in Idaho, I believe, is absolutely paramount. In Idaho right now, educator retention is about 90%, but that could change drastically in the next few years. Studies have shown in Idaho that 50% of educators are considering leaving the profession, which is really worrisome to me. Rural and remote districts in Idaho can sometimes only retain 70% of their educators every year, which means that 30% of their educators year to year are leaving. And that can really alter the dynamics of a school. And why does this matter for our schools in Idaho? Well, high turnover in our schools, even if it's 10%, even if it's 30%, undermines student achievement. And that's really impactful for our kids. And these rates are highest in our schools that serve low-income students. And they're already at a disadvantage. Turnover in our schools can cost our districts up to $9,000 per new educator. And that's in hiring them, trying to encourage them to apply, and in onboarding. And they can cost urban districts up to $20,000 for a new hire. And so that's pretty staggering. And turnover undermines teacher quality. And what that means is when you're losing your seasoned teachers and you're getting brand new teachers who might not even be finishing their student teaching. Like, for example, my husband just got hired this year as a new teacher in the Coeur d'Alene district. He didn't even get to finish his student teaching. As a math teacher, he needed to get in the job right away because they were so desperate for new teachers. Luckily, he's really good at his job, but he didn't even get to finish his student teaching. And that's where we're at in Idaho right now. So why are Idaho's teachers leaving the profession? Well, we obviously know that there's a pay gap. Even with recent investments in education, educators can't afford the cost of living in Idaho. I hear this every day from the teachers right across the hall. Many times teachers are married to other teachers. Lots of times we have single educators. They simply can't afford the cost of rent and the cost of living. This is another fact that is super important this week. Statewide, this week, voters rejected 70% of supplemental levies. That's a pretty staggering number. Many of these levies fund educator pay and teaching positions. And educators no longer feel valued in their communities. When 70% of our supplemental levies failed, a lot of educators feel that they were failed. And they feel that they're no longer valued. And when supplemental levies pay for positions like coaching, a lot of educators, that's part of their salary. And when those positions are cut, they can no longer be able to afford living in their communities, and that's just a fact. So if those don't pass in May, if they're rerun again, a lot of educators are telling me that they're going to have to leave. And that's really worrisome to me. Another thing is teacher stress, high class sizes, student mental health needs, and increasing student behavior issues are contributing to burnout. Idaho's schools have student to counselor ratios of 1 to 400 to 500. The American School Counselor Association, their ratio recommends 1 to 250. So we're about double where we need to be. Another fact that I kind of wanted to bring to your attention is student attendance, which is something that you guys probably really aren't aware of because you're not in the classroom, but I am every day. And so as a teacher, I'm responsible every day for student achievement. And that's okay because I'm a teacher and that's what I do. But our student attendance rates in Idaho ever since COVID have fallen from about 95% attendance to about 90%, which means our kids aren't coming to school. And we really don't know why, but a lot of times it's just parent choice. And in Idaho, we're a parent choice state. We really believe that parents get to do what they want to do with their kids, and that's just that. But this year, I've had a lot of parents take their kids out for cruises and vacations and things like that. I've also had a kid that's been out of my classroom for 58 days this year. And that's really out of my hands. And there's not much I can do about it personally as a teacher, but I can teach them when they're there as hard as I can, and I definitely do that because I absolutely love these kids. And I teach as well as I can when they're there, but if we have a new attendance-based funding, that's really going to negatively impact our district. I'm hearing from my district that although it looks like we're going to get 14% raises across the board, when all is said and done, my district's going to lose about $300,000. So it's not really all it's cracked up to be. Another thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is the professionalism and expertise of our career kind of being weakened by apprenticeship concepts. I really believe in the professionalism and expertise of teaching, and I really hope that we can keep that going with the teaching career being a bachelor's degree and being certified. And I have solutions for you. It's not all doom and gloom. I have wonderful ways that we can retain teachers in Idaho, and I'd really love to share these with you today. And I hope that you can work with me and we can look at these together. So some of the solutions that I have to keep wonderful, amazing Idaho teachers in the classroom, because we have some of the best teachers in our state. I work with the most amazing educators. We can pay educators a salary that compares with other fields that require bachelor's or master's degrees. Another thing that we can do is help educators pay for the professional development that is required for recertification, as is done in other careers. So a lot of teachers, we have to get recertification to keep up our certification. If we could help teachers with that, we would definitely retain them and help them stay in the profession. Another way that we could help our teachers in Idaho is to fund education at the state level. As educators, we really can't rely on local voters to make up the funding that the 2006 tax changes created. I'm just going to let you know that in the past 3 months, it has been a part-time job for me to try to pass our levy. And thank heavens, I'm just going to say, our levy passed in Post Falls. Like, by the grace of God, our levy passed. And I am so grateful for our community. But I had to work tooth and nail. I really did. I had to wave signs. I created a group called Citizens for Post Falls Schools with a couple of my friends, and we were at every event in Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene trying to get our community to vote. I passed out mailers every weekend, like a couple times. It was a part-time job for me, but it shouldn't be for all of us educators to do that. So if we could try to do more funding at the state level, that would really help us. Funding education to lower our class sizes so that we can make really meaningful connections with our students would really be helpful. I have 30 kids in my 4th grade class, and it might not seem a lot to you, but these days with the kids that we have, that's a lot. And it's really hard because my small groups are 9 kids. And at my little kidney table, we don't fit. And I do the best that I can, and we really learn as well as we can, and I love the kids in my class, but 30 is a lot. And it will really help us increase our test scores and give that return on investment that you all want so badly if we could lower those class sizes. And it would help retain teachers because we could make more connections with our students, it would reduce behaviors, and we could just do a better job in the classroom overall. Also, we educators would really like to be able to teach social and emotional learning. It's not a bad word. Students these days really do need skills in self-awareness, self-control, and interpersonal skills. I know that a lot of times we like to think that these are being taught in the home, but a lot of times they're not. And our kids come to school needing to be safe, needing to be loved before they can be taught. And sometimes it's my job to help them learn those skills. And so we really need to be able to have the ability and time to teach those things so that the kids can get along and be able to have those self-control skills so that they can learn. This is a passion of mine because I have a master's degree in special education, is one of the things that we don't have in Idaho yet is a pathway to become a board-certified behavior analyst. So our colleges and universities in Idaho do not have this certification yet, but I think it would be a great idea. So to become a board-certified behavior analyst, you have to have a master's degree in special education that allows you to get this certification. And to get that, then you can go and diagnose student behavior and help students get an individualized education plan or IEP. Right now, our Idahoans are having to go out of state and pay out-of-state tuition to get this certification. And it's very expensive to do. And if one of our colleges or universities like U of I or BSU would provide a pathway to get this certification, we could grow our own. And it would be a really smart idea for Idaho. So I hope that some of you will talk to some of the presidents of the universities and get this going. Another way that we could help teacher attrition is to increase funding for school counselors because our students really deserve more help in our schools. Right now, a lot of our time that our principals that are being used for helping student behavior could really be helped making teachers better teachers. And that's what I think that their time should be used. Another thing is we could consider some community school models or wraparound services and really helping our parents get the services they need to really support their families, which would help their kids at school as well. And it would be a more holistic model. We also need to not blame educators for student attendance. I really think that we should consider going back to enrollment-based funding and also just kind of across the board, look at student attendance rates when you look at achievement data. Because our attendance rates across the state are pretty low. You'd be surprised. And more than anything, I hope that you will really ask educators how to help them stay and listen to educators. One of the things that I'm really worried about is asking our educators to be 4 years of college education for apprentice teachers. That's something that's really worrisome to me. I think that we really need to consider what is making educators leave the profession instead of trying to get teachers into the classroom too quickly. I really want to see education stay a strong, well-paid career that college students will want to invest in. So I want to consider paying tuition for new teachers. The Idaho Senate has approved that, incentives for veterinary students and doctors. I think we should do that for teachers too, because it's a career that we need in Idaho. Idaho students deserve the best, highest quality educators. And as an Idaho educator and as the parent of an Idaho public school student, this is what I believe. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you for listening.
I'm going to put us at ease so that we can appropriately appreciate our Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Lauritzen. So we're back in session. I'm going to open it up for questions. I have one. Have you been back to Washington, D.C. yet on our behalf, or when will you go, and what's the plan?
Thank you, Chairman Yamamoto. I will be going in April 22nd, the week of that.
Excellent. Representative Hill.
Yes, Madam Chair, I wanted to ask Karen about when a child doesn't attend school for 58 days, do they flunk like they used to, or they just keep pressing on through? That was kind of an interesting comment.
Ms. Lawrenson.
Thank you, Representative Hill. Well, we can't flunk them. What we usually do is get health and welfare involved and just make sure that the child is well. We usually have our student resource officer make a wellness check at their house and just make sure that their basic needs are being met. And hopefully that gets them coming back to school. Usually it does, but sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes we have students who have homelessness or other issues that are going on in their homes. And that's a lot of times part of the problem.
Do you have a follow-up?
A follow-up, since I live with a teacher and I hear it every day, it's interesting. She has this concern where they don't come to school. They're in 7th grade and they can't read. They've never been held responsible. They come to school, they just keep coming 3 days a week and they can't read. It's just a comment I've noticed. I hear it every single day. That doesn't seem to be any accountability for these. I think flunking seems to be a good idea, but they're 7th grade and they can't read. That's what my wife, I hear every day.
So I will just tell you that there used to be a thing that we would say, 7th grade, the best 5 years of my life, because if you hold them back sometimes until they read, it's challenging. But I will tell you, too, that schools have a response to intervention. And so they put plans in place that try to get them caught up to where they need to be. But the fact remains, whether it's a learning disability or just lack, if you don't show, you don't grow. And it is a tough thing. And I think our Teacher of the Year is correct that to just keep holding someone back so that somebody maybe is 15 years old in a 5th grade classroom, probably not really an option either. Representative Lantine.
Thank you. Sorry, a little under the weather. I don't really have a question. I just want to thank you for your efforts to promote the field of education. Resonated with me. You said that sometimes student teachers didn't get to finish theirs. Towards the end of my career, as a middle school principal, I'd find out about a student teacher in another building or another district, and I'd just go hire them. And they'd finish out their last semester working for me, and usually they weren't always perfect, but they were somebody I could work with and make at least close to perfect. And so I appreciate your comment on that. I don't see the teacher shortage going away, and I just hope we can find ways to retain the good teachers that we have. That's got to be one of our top goals, is to retain the good ones, and retain everybody at this point, including classified and everyone else. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your efforts for the students of Idaho. Thank you.
Representative Galaviz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for a question.
Yes.
Thank you for being here, by the way. Appreciate the perspective you have about what needs to happen at the state level. I know I took a lot of notes about what can help the profession, what can help grow our teachers and provide for the various needs across the schools. So you gave great advice at the state level of what we need to do. I believe, are you in District 5?
In Post Falls.
Okay, so your reps are right here. So I wonder, could you give us some thoughts about what local support for public schools looks like? What does that look like in the town? So you've given us some good direction at the state level, what we need to do, but what do locals need to do to support their schools and support their teachers?
Mrs. Lauritzen.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Galaviz. I think that what local, everyone can do to support their educators is just basically, what I hear a lot is what they think teachers do and what teachers, just be in the classroom. I think is what a lot of people just can do is to just show up for their kids. And I think that is just what everybody can do. And that's from the top on down, is just to actually go and see what is happening in our schools every day. And that's the amazing things that are happening, as well as the tough things that are happening. And I think a lot of times people have ideas of what's going on in our classrooms, ideas of what's being taught in our classrooms, ideas of what's happening in our classrooms. And I think that even if parents just got to see an hour of what their kids' classrooms looks like, or if representatives or even the superintendent just got to go in for a half a day and just see what it's like in our classrooms, people would get a much better idea of what school's like. And I also think that if we just had more community support of people understanding what we're voting on, how our schools are funded, just be generally more involved in our schools, just from the bottom up. I think us teachers, we teachers, just could really use that support. And I think that, all classrooms, my classroom, all teachers will tell you, we're a very open book. We love to have people in and share our classrooms with people. And we would just really appreciate to have people see the amazing things that are happening in our schools every day.
Representative Birch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Lauritzen, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Lauritzen.
Lauritzen. Congratulations. Welcome. You had mentioned one of the concerns was student attendance, dropping of student attendance. But you also then said you felt we should go to enrollment as opposed to.
Oh, I meant
average daily
average
attendance.
daily, yeah.
Okay. It would seem to me that if I understand the arguments for enrollment and making it easier to manage at an administrative level, but what I'm hearing you saying is that despite the complexity of funding through average daily attendance, having that visibility provides an incentive to the school districts to do what they can to increase average daily attendance. Would that be Would that be correct?
Mrs. Lawrenson.
Thank you, Representative Birch. I do believe that most of the attendance issues that we're seeing are not a lot that the district can encourage parents out of. So I don't think that there's much that we can do at a district level that can encourage students to, I mean, a lot of what we're seeing is vacations that are in the middle of the school year, and just, you know, long weekends and things like that. And a lot of that is parent choice. But I don't think that there's a lot to discourage that. But it is something that, you know, would take away a lot of funding. So I don't really know the answer to how to fix that, but we just have seen a lot of changes to our attendance. So I don't really, I've talked with our school district, I've talked with our administration, and they don't also really fully grasp the problem either. They don't really understand why students are gone. A lot of times the office will call, nobody answers the phone. So we don't know if students are ill. We don't know if students are just gone on a, you know, families in town. A lot of times we don't really know why they're gone. So it's kind of a problem that's up in the air.
Representative Birch.
Follow-up, thank you. Then just, and I appreciate that. So what prompted you to then suggest that we go to average daily attendance if it's not going to?
Mrs.
help the
Lawrence,
problem?
you're always going to come back through me, so I know it's confusing because he's
Yeah.
asking you directly a question, but if you'll just let me do my part, then it's super cool. Mrs. Lawrenson.
Thank you, Chair Yamamoto. I actually would like us to go to enrollment. So enrollment-based funding would be the best. So I'm sorry for any miscommunication, but if we went to enrollment-based as opposed to average daily attendance, that would be best.
Just real quick, if I may
One
ask.
more, because
Yeah.
we have two more people, and I'm trying to get us out.
Would that because of the funding aspect of it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah, it always needs to come back through here. Representative Nelson.
Quickly, I'd appreciate your thoughts on teacher training. I think we're dialed into 4 years or 2 years, but maybe as a high altitude thought, what do you see successful teachers for a skill set really need to have?
Mrs. Lawrenson.
Thank you. I believe that successful teachers really need to have a wealth of background information. And I believe that truly successful teachers have to be able to teach multiple grade levels. Because truthfully, at a school, you never know what you're going to need to be able to teach from year to year. And that is something that kind of worries me with the apprenticeship model, is because if you only apprentice in one classroom, you really are not going to see or get experience in multiple grade levels. And that's what like the bachelor's degree, like full teacher education model gives you, is when you get a full teacher certification, you get certified in kindergarten through 8th grade in Idaho. So you're fully prepared to walk in and be able to teach kindergarten through 8th grade. And you're supposed to have the background information to walk into any of those classrooms and be ready to teach. So if a school needs you to teach any of those, you know, grade levels, you're ready to do that. And with the apprenticeship model, that's what worries me, is if I am teaching or in a classroom and, for example, just do 1st grade, and that's what I do my apprenticeship in, and that's the grade level I do, but I don't get any of that content information or background knowledge in those other grade levels, and I'm in a rural district, and next year they need me to teach 6th grade, I might not be ready to teach that math or that science content, et cetera, and I might not have received that in types of information, if that makes sense.
Representative Nelson.
Madam Chair, Speaker, that's a totally different question, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on curriculum. Obviously, your education pursuing it, but I don't think most people in the legislature really understand just the plain up dollars and cents cost per student each year to have curriculum, and not just for your fourth grade class, but when you buy it, you're buying it, it's a dialed in approach, first through sixth grade. And just if you touch base on the costs and the upkeep for that and things, just it's a different question, but it's the business side of running a school.
Mrs. Lauritzen.
Thank you. Yes, it does cost quite a bit. Luckily, it's not a recurring cost. I mean, districts don't have to purchase curriculum every year, but it is a multi-million-dollar cost when you do purchase a curriculum. So when a district does buy curriculum, it does cost a few $1,000,000, whatever, like a math curriculum or a social studies curriculum or a reading curriculum. And then, if there's a consumable cost to that, that is per year. And if there's an online component, that costs as well. But then the skill set of the teacher is being able to then utilize that curriculum to meet the needs of students. And so that's where the real art and science of teaching comes in, is being able to take that curriculum that's purchased and make it come to life.
Representative Clow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Lauritzen, first of all, congratulations on the recognition to you. And I wasn't going to say anything, but some questions came up by some of our colleagues here that I think I need to address. And one of your slides mentioned that one of the problems is student attendance is it's hard for kids to learn if they're not there. And you showed a slide that showed attendance dropping from 95% to 90%. And I think that may have happened during the pandemic while we were using an enrollment-based formula. So ADA or enrollment's not going to solve the problem of keeping kids in school. So I just have to say that, because attendance numbers up until 4 years ago, they're lower than what we would call enrollment, but when we compare attendance, I think there's been some impact by the pandemic and the switch to enrollment. So maybe we're not encouraging kids to be in the classroom as much on enrollment. And that's one of the reasons that some people are adverse to going to an enrollment. And you mentioned it's about the money. I have always been, I don't know about always, but I've been a strong advocate for enrollment, and I hope we're going to see that. And I did hear that we may be going back to enrollment for this next year under a rule, but I'll have to wait to see if that actually happens. Anyway, I heard some information about that yesterday. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure on that. The other thing you said, that 70% of levies failed. I don't think it was the levies that failed. I think the bonds failed. I think a high percentage of levies actually passed. So, I just wanted to make sure. The headline said 70% of the bonds failed or voted, something like that. But anyway, thank you.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Lauritzen, and congratulations. Thanks for taking time, probably out of your spring break, to be here.
Not yet.
Okay. You are as free to evade this question as you like, but I have to ask it, and I maybe put on your doctoral hat for a minute. So yesterday, we debated a bill on the floor about feminine hygiene products and the extent to which schools should make these available. And a number of women stood up and said, we shouldn't do this. Women take care of one another. We make sure that these girls have what they need. And then I was looking at your slide, I think it was your third slide, and it talked about, how much teachers have to dig into their own pocket for their PD, for their research. I know how much you dig in your own pocket to provide supplies for your classroom. And I can't help but think about the teaching profession being dominated by women, and knowing, and now I'm increasingly coming to this feeling that at a pretty dangerous level, we exploit the physical and emotional labor of women in this state. And until we address that social phenomenon, I don't know how we're going to address a lot of these other things we're talking about. So my question for you is, what advice do you have for political leaders in Idaho to help us address what I think is one of our biggest blind spots.
Mrs. Lauritzen, remember you were given the opportunity to evade.
Thank you for that question. Actually, I believe that, well, for the feminine products question, I think anything that would keep girls from not being absent is a reason to help girls be in school. So if we gave products at school, that would keep girls in school. And anything that keeps kids in school is something that we should help them with. Also, I believe that many teachers are women. That is just a fact. And a lot of times we just give our resources because we do. And that's just something that has always happened. And I feel that many of the newer teachers, are less able to do that just because of, budget constraints and things like that. And as a profession, it's tougher for teachers to give, I believe, in the way that teachers used to. And I feel that spending, their own money, it's always been kind of laughable as a teacher when the tax credit's $250 out of your own pocket. We've always kind of laughed at that because I spend that much a month, easily of my own money in my classroom. But we've always laughed because there's no other profession really where you spend that type of money, and it's just assumed that you do. So I really do feel that that's something as a profession that we need to look at, that it's just assumed that teachers do that. And why is that something that's just something we do for the profession? And if we made it a little easier for educators to not have to do that, it might be a way that we retain them. So I think you have a valid point.
We have time for one last question. We go on the floor at 10, so I try to be aware of that. So Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question regarding the apprenticeships that you spoke of. We have a bill on the floor that the Senate's had brought, and I happen to be sponsoring it. So I'd like to hear more about that. And it's just a framework to allow that to happen, and that the state board was going to have to adopt a plan and so forth. And I'm thinking that as you were talking, that perhaps you might be able to offer some real insight, because I think that we're looking at ways to bring more teachers in to get them certified. So if part of the program would be you are under a mentor in kindergarten through maybe third grade, and for part of it, and then maybe we move them to another mentor. So I'm just curious as to if you think that there are ways in which we could do this and set it up properly, that it would be beneficial, because the end goal is certification and to have good quality teacher come out of that. So I'm just a little more curious what more you have to say about that.
Mrs. Lauritzen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I also think about when I think about a plan like that is the workload on the educator who's the mentor, because I think with 30 children in a classroom and then trying to also explain everything that I'm doing in a day as I'm doing it to an adult, that seems a little staggering. So that's also kind of, I would really need to think about how that would work. Because the workload of trying to manage the differentiated needs of 30 children in a classroom is an amazing feat on its own, to be completely honest with you. And to try to explain the ins and outs of every single decision that I make as I'm doing it to another adult, I don't know how that would happen. So that's kind of where I'm trying to wrap my head around that. So that's where I would try to see how that would work. It would really take a lot of thought.
Okay. I thank you very much for that, and because I'm very cognizant of that from educators, and I think we can maybe come up with some strategies with good minds like yours and others that it could maybe, be a successful item for you to get more people in. So thank you so much for all you do. We really appreciate it.
So we do thank you. It's been a pleasure to have you here and honor our Teacher of the Year, Karen Lauritzen. Thanks so much. And with that, committee, we are adjourned.